I lost my mom 2 years ago, but we weren't. My mom spent 30 years not talking to me. Like I said, my relationship wasn't good.
Yeah.
With my parents, so that's why I wanted to go. Mine was so shitty with my mom. I wanted to fix it with the kids.
Exactly.
So I know it's great to see. It's great to see someone that cares about their father that much. That means something to me. That's what it's about. You want your kids to fucking respect you and at least get something from you,
At the end of the day, he was always there. He and my mom split up, and we couldn't tell. I mean, they split up different. He had, went and stayed with he had his own apartment. He did, but you couldn't tell. I mean, from the outside looking in, if people were looking, they couldn't tell he wasn't there because he was there every day at the house. He'd come by, make sure we get our schoolwork, every practice, every game, he was always there. There was never a time he wasn't there. There was never a time. And he and the people in our neighborhood, like it was him and his other dad, a guy named Jackson James, and what they would do is the city was supposed to cut this field. Right, it was right next to our house, and they didn't do it. We called them, but they didn't do it. So they took it upon themselves. You understand, like the grass grew tall.
Yeah, right. No,
it had a little bambooish.
It gets like that.
Yeah, and they wouldn't cut it. The city wouldn't cut it. I mean, I don't know, it's the black side of town, whatever. But anyway, they took it upon themselves. They basically said, "Fuck it." My dad never said "fuck." He said, "Fuck it." Yeah. So they got together, he and him. And they cut that whole field. What they did was, and it's something I learned from my dad. He goes, a little bit at a time, you accomplish your goal. And what they do is, like say this is our yard and this is that field. Yeah. So my dad would get the lawnmower over, and it's push lawnmower.
Oh, dude, the old manual.
Old push lawnmower, and he would go a little bit over the normal thing, right?
Yeah.
And he'd cut a little bit of that, and the lawnmower would stall.
Yeah.
And he could cut it, right? Lawnmower would stall on the way back. Lawnmower would stall.
Yeah.
And they end up cutting the entire fucking field. Yeah. Like Jackson James will come in maybe the next day.
Those old school gas powered ones.
Yeah.
And the little ones.
Little shit. The old school.
And before they upgraded them, they made them fucking machines. Yeah.
But my dad was, all about fitness. He was like, riding on.
Dude, to cut a field with one of those things, it's gotta be fucking brutal.
That's what I'm saying. My dad was a fucking motherfucker, dude.
Yeah.
They plowed. I mean, they cut the whole field. Like they the entire field. He and Jackson James did that shit because the city wouldn't cut it, and they maintained it. They maintained it.
Yeah.
The city. We never saw somebody cut that fucking field. My dad and that dude did that shit, and for the neighborhood. Yeah. They cut that shit. I was like, fuck, man. And that's why, like, when I lived with my roommate, whatever, I loved cutting the grass. I remember my dad. Because my dad would do that shit. He'd fucking just be, and I just walked, look at this. I remember a kid going, look at this motherfucker, man. He handled his business. He did that. And, if he needed a ride from football practice or whatever, my dad would, give kids a ride because he understood. He understood a bad situation. And if the kids made a mistake and said, man, I flunked this test. My dad, you did what? And he would give them a talking to, but it was all out of love, Like the kids were like, hey, man, you just dropped me off here. You know what I mean? But that's what my dad was about, man. He was about to just keep you on the straight and narrow. And the kids were like, man, your daddy's mean. You go, no, now you just fucking...
Dude, that old school father shit, man. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so hard. It's different to be a parent these days now. Because back then when we grew up, there was no bullshit. And fathers especially. My mom was a different story. My dad was a train wreck. But I saw the men I respected in town. My football coach was one.
Yes,
he was a guy that had. My football coaches were men I respected because they had standards, they had rules, they had boundaries. They set boundaries.
Yes,
and there were other friends I have who had fathers who I looked up to that I respected as men. You know what I mean? Those guys. Eddie Sostek, the Sostek family was a great family, and I loved their parents. Because they were a family that had standards and boundaries and rules, and they raised proper kids, and you know what I mean. But they were men. Those were the men I looked up to in my neighborhood. Were guys like that. So a guy like that would be a guy like I never hated a guy like that.
They were fucking great.
They were just fucking old school men, and it's something that worked with me where I was like, I understood that.
Yes, and you respected.
Yeah.
I remember my coach. He was like,